He didn't raise his head, didn't blink, didn't speak kindly. He just typed and said the words that shattered what was left. Guest rooms made. You can sleep there. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where true love is tested, quiet. Strength speaks loudest, and life always leaves lessons behind. Today's story will pull you deep into a quiet marriage, one that wasn't destroyed by scandal or shouting, but by silence. What happens when a woman, raised with love and taught to be steady, realizes that silence from the man she trusted is louder than any betrayal? Stay with us as we uncover a story of quiet heartbreak, emotional reckoning, and the strength it takes to leave without slamming the door. He didn't raise his head, didn't blink, didn't speak kindly. He just typed and said the words that shattered what was left. Guest rooms made. You can sleep there. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where love isn't always loud, but lessons always echo. In today's story, one woman's quiet heartbreak speaks louder than any scandal. Stay with us. The house was too still, too clean, too perfect. Nyla sat at the long oak dining table she picked out herself 3 years ago. She ran her finger along the linen runner she'd laid that morning. White with gold trim, soft, beautiful. The plates were set, the wine was open, the candles flickered. But Kaylin didn't come home on time. Again. The digital clock on the microwave turned 9:48 p.m. She stared at the untouched chicken marsala. She'd learned to make it after overhearing Kaylin mention he liked it during their first year of marriage. It was supposed to be their anniversary dinner. 3 years. No messages, no flowers, not even a call. She wasn't expecting fireworks. She knew who she married. But a happy anniversary wouldn't have hurt. A kiss on the cheek, a glance, something. She checked her phone one last time. Nothing. The door finally opened at 10:16 p.m. She heard his footsteps, slow, heavy, tired. Kaylin walked in, loosened his tie, unbuttoned his cuffs, and paused when he saw the table. He didn't say anything. "Dinner's still warm," Nyla said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Kaylin's eyes scanned the candles, the plates, her dress. "I'm not hungry," he said, his tone blank. "I had a thing with the board. They ordered in." Nyla nodded once, not surprised. He started walking toward the hallway. "I waited," she said softly. Not in anger, just honesty. Kaylin stopped. He turned just enough to face her. "I'm too tired to talk tonight." She stood slowly. Her hands rested lightly on the back of the chair. "Kaylin." His eyes didn't soften. "Nyla, don't start." "I'm not starting anything," she said gently. "I'm standing here." That's when he sighed, deep and long. And then came the words, "Guest rooms made. You can sleep there." She blinked. That was it. Not a fight, not a scream, just an instruction, like a business memo. He walked into the bedroom and shut the door. Nyla didn't follow. She stood still, in that same soft cream dress she'd bought just for tonight. He didn't even notice it. She looked around the house, her house, the floors she polished, the throw pillows she arranged, the quiet scent of lavender she kept near the vents, and she realized she'd been invisible for a long time. In the guest room, she didn't cry. She folded the dress carefully and placed it in her suitcase. She changed into jeans and a hoodie, brushed her hair into a low bun, and packed a small overnight bag. One pair of shoes, her planner, a few toiletries. She walked out without slamming the door. The street outside was quiet, late. She called a rideshare and gave them an address to a short-term rental building downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it would be hers for now. She didn't leave a note. Kaylin wouldn't look for one anyway. The apartment smelled like fresh paint and air conditioning. Nyla dropped her bag near the door and walked to the window. 9th floor, view of the city lights. Everything moved so fast outside. Cars, people, time. Inside, it was just her. She sat on the couch. She didn't turn on the TV. She didn't take off her shoes. She just sat there, still, empty. 3 days passed. Kaylin didn't call. She didn't call either. She didn't want to explain. Not to him. Not to anyone. Her best friend, Mira, texted asking if she was okay. Nyla replied with one word, "Fine." On the fourth day, she ordered takeout from a tiny Thai place she remembered liking. She ate half the noodles and saved the rest for breakfast. On the fifth day, she opened her laptop and checked her project queue. Emails, updates, bills. Life didn't stop when your marriage cracked. It kept going, and she wasn't the type to let it bury her. On the sixth day, she searched, "Divorce attorney near me." She didn't flinch when the results came up. She called one. Mira showed up on the seventh day, unannounced. She knocked, loud and firm. Nyla opened the door, surprised. Mira stepped in, saw the empty walls, the packed corner of takeout boxes, and said, "Oh, honey." Nyla smiled, small. "I'm fine. You always say that when you're not." They sat on the floor, no furniture yet. Mira crossed her legs and stared at her. "What happened?" Nyla didn't cry. She didn't dramatize it. "He told me to sleep in the guest room." Mira's lips parted. "He what?" Just like that. Mira blinked. "But it was your anniversary." Nyla nodded. Mira exhaled hard. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to," Nyla replied. "I think I've said enough." For years, they sat in silence. The city moved outside. Inside, Nyla finally felt still. Kaylen noticed on day 3, not because of the dinner table, not because of her scent missing in the sheets, but because her tea shelf was untouched. He walked past the kitchen, paused, and turned back. 12 herbal teas lined the wall, all unopened. No dishes in the sink, no light in her studio, no humming in the hallway. His phone buzzed. He checked it, hoping for a message from her. Nothing. He went into the bedroom, opened her closet. Half empty, shoes missing. That's when his chest tightened. He walked through the house again, opened her planner drawer. He called. No answer. He called again. Still nothing. By the 5th call, it went straight to voicemail. He left 1 message. Then 2. By the 3rd, he gave up. He didn't go to the office that day. He sat at the edge of the bed, phone in hand, thinking about the guest room, about the candles, about her eyes when he dismissed her like she was optional. He didn't realize how quiet the house had become, not until it echoed back at him. The next morning, Kaylen didn't go to work. Instead, he stood in front of the hallway mirror, shirt wrinkled, eyes red. He hadn't shaved. He hadn't touched the bed. Something about her absence stripped the house of its soul. The floors were clean, but the warmth was gone. It didn't smell like her chamomile oil. The air didn't carry her quiet laugh anymore. And that tea shelf, still untouched. He walked back to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the mattress. He remembered their first night here. She chose the sheets. She placed the scented candle near the lamp. She liked soft white linen and fresh eucalyptus. He'd never cared before, but now, with everything still and her side of the bed cold, he noticed everything. He didn't know where she went, but he felt the shift, and it rattled him more than any board meeting ever had. Nyla met with the attorney that afternoon. The office was quiet. Neutral walls, a soft smell of paper and lemon disinfectant. She filled out the basic forms, stated her reason clearly: emotional abandonment. No shouting, no infidelity, no scandal, just years of neglect. "Do you want to pursue asset division?" the attorney asked gently. Nyla shook her head. "I want peace." She slid her wedding band off in front of the attorney and placed it in her purse. The metal felt heavier in her hand than on her finger. That evening, she walked 2 blocks to a small bookstore. She used to go there before she met Kaylen, before weekends were spent waiting, before her time was rearranged around his. The cashier didn't recognize her. She browsed quietly, picked out a poetry book, and sat by the window. She didn't text anyone. She didn't post anything. She read. The words felt like oxygen. Kaylen went to her studio the next day. The receptionist greeted him. "She hasn't been in since last week." He nodded. "Thank you." Then he waited in his car. He didn't know why. He didn't have a plan. He just couldn't sit in the house anymore. It wasn't guilt that sat with him. It was clarity. He'd been absent, not by choice, but by habit, by thinking she'd always stay because she loved him. He never thought she'd leave so quietly. That's what haunted him. Mira brought groceries to Nyla's apartment the next morning. Nothing fancy, just yogurt, fruit, fresh bread. "You need to eat something besides rice noodles," she said, unpacking bags. Nyla smiled softly. "Thanks. You gonna talk to him?" "I'm not sure I want to," Nyla admitted. Mira paused. "Do you still love him?" Nyla didn't answer right away. "I loved him when he was present. When he tried. Do you think he's trying now?" Nyla hesitated. "I think he's realizing." "That's not the same." Mira gave her space to think. Then she slid a sealed envelope across the table. Nyla opened it. It was a handwritten letter, Kaylin's handwriting. She didn't read it right away. She held it for a long time. Later that night, sitting on the floor in her studio, Nyla opened the envelope. It wasn't long. It wasn't poetic, just honest. "Nyla, I don't know how to ask for another chance without sounding like I don't deserve it. Because the first don't. You gave me your best years. I gave you pieces. I let work fill the room we built together. I let silence sit where your voice should have been. You didn't leave loudly, and that's what made it louder. I'm not asking you to come home. I'm asking if I can show you I'm learning." Kay. Nyla folded the letter and set it aside. She stared at the ceiling. No tears, just silence. The next day, she saw him. He was outside her building, standing next to his car. He didn't call her, didn't text. She walked out carrying her lunch bag, paused when she saw him. Kaylin stood still. No suit, just jeans and a long-sleeve Henley, hands in his pockets. She walked past him. He followed gently. "Nyla." She stopped, didn't turn yet. He took 2 steps closer, but gave her space. "Do you need something?" she asked. Voice even. "I just wanted to say sorry. In person." She turned slowly. He looked older, more worn than before. "I didn't write that letter to get you back. I wrote it because I should have said those things years ago." She nodded once. "You're right. I'm not proud of how I made you feel." "You didn't make me feel anything, Kaylin," she said. "I felt alone. That was mine to carry. But I let you help build it." He blinked. She continued. "I want peace, not a rescue. I'm not here to rescue you. I'm here because I don't want to disappear from a life I ignored." She looked at him, long and hard. He stepped back. "If you ever want to talk, I'll listen this time." She nodded. He walked to his car. She stood there long after he left. That night, she slept for the first time in days. Not because things were fixed, but because things were honest. She didn't walk into love with wide eyes. She walked into it carefully, like stepping into a house built on quiet soil. Because love, to Nyla, was never the explosion. It was peace. And now, that peace was what she had to protect. Charleston summers were long and soft. Nyla remembered them through music. Her father's piano drifting through cracked windows and porch fans spinning slowly overhead. She grew up in a house that never had much, but always had warmth. Her mother worked at a pharmacy during the day and cleaned offices some nights. Her father taught music at the public high school. They weren't wealthy, but they were present. Dinner was always together. No phones, no excuses. "Show up," her mother used to say. "Even when you're tired, even when you don't feel like talking." Showing up is love. Nyla learned that early. It shaped everything. She didn't date much in high school. Too quiet, too focused. She liked sketching homes, flipping through old architecture books, finding beauty in porch curves and tall windows. Her dream wasn't fame, it was function. At 18, she enrolled at a local college, studied architecture, not for prestige, but to create something that felt like her childhood home, warm, safe, still. By 22, she had her degree. By 23, she'd started working for a small firm. By 25, she was ready to branch out, start her own studio. She didn't have connections, but she had a steady stream of small residential clients. Then one day, an unexpected email changed everything. Subject line, Wellness Wing Project, Reese Tech. She thought it was spam, but it wasn't. Kaylin Reese's assistant had found her through a local design feature in a niche online magazine. He'd liked her work. He needed someone quiet, competent, and focused. That's what the email said. She read it twice, then accepted the meeting. Kaylin Reese didn't make strong first impressions. He made cold ones. When Nyla arrived at the Reese Tech office, the lobby was sleek and glassy. The receptionist didn't offer a smile. She was led to the executive floor, an intimidating hallway with no artwork, no personality, just silence and steel. Kaylin's office looked like a tech ad. White surfaces, metal lines, no clutter. He barely looked up when she entered. "Nyla Brooke," he said, scanning the file in front of him. "Small studio, no corporate background. I build for people." "Not boards," she replied. That made him look up. Finally, a slow beat. Then something shifted in his posture. "You don't like offices?" "I like peace," she said calmly. He watched her for a long second, then nodded. "You're hired." Just like that. Their first few interactions were all business. Kaylin was precise, never rude, never warm either. But she noticed things. The way he touched the wood panel samples with slow fingers. How he preferred natural light to overhead fixtures. The way his shoulders relaxed when she explained her vision without overselling it. One day, after a design review, he offered her coffee. "I don't drink much," she said. He nodded. "They make good tea." They sat outside a cafe near the office. He didn't talk about business. He asked her about Charleston, her parents, her upbringing. He didn't talk much about his own. Dad paid for things. Mom left. That was all he said. She didn't pry. She just listened. That's what drew him in. He asked her to dinner 2 weeks later. She said no at first, not because she didn't want to, but because she wasn't sure what his interest was. "I'm not a client anymore," he clarified. "I want to know what makes you laugh when you're not holding blueprints." So she said yes. Their first dinner was quiet, no grand gestures. He didn't bring flowers. She didn't wear heels. But she laughed when he asked her about her favorite building material. "Cedar," she said. "It smells like memory." He smiled. "I like that." She asked him what he feared most. "Being someone people tolerate," he said. "Not someone they want to stay with." She looked down at her tea and said, "Then don't forget to show up." 2 months later, they were inseparable. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. He invited her to meet his board, not as his girlfriend, but as the designer of the company's new mental wellness space. They didn't touch much in public, but when they were alone, he reached for her hand in quiet ways. When he couldn't sleep, he'd call her, not to talk, just to listen to her breathing on the line. He liked how she didn't rush. She liked how he softened. He proposed on a regular Tuesday. No ring, no camera. Just a folded napkin with the words, "Stay." She looked at it, smiled, and nodded. Yes. They moved into a clean townhouse with tall windows and quiet mornings. She kept tea by the stove. He bought her a piano. She placed it near the balcony. They didn't have a fairy tale, but they had moments. He made space. She filled it gently. But over time, the space grew larger, and he stopped noticing. Kaylin never yelled. He didn't lie, didn't cheat, didn't raise his voice. But he disappeared in plain sight, bit by bit. It started with long days at Reese Tech. Meetings bled into dinners, dinners into late-night calls. She adjusted. At first, she left his meals in the fridge, covered neatly. Post-it notes on top. He didn't read them. Then she stopped writing them. He said things like, "It's a busy quarter," or "You know how it is." But she didn't, because she had built a business too, and still made time for dinner. Still made time for them. Their second anniversary came and went. He brought home a flat delivery box, pastries from the shop she used to love. "I remembered," he said. She nodded, grateful but numb. He didn't ask what she did that day. She had waited, lit a candle, set the table. She didn't mention it, because mentioning it meant confronting something too real. She often sat on the couch beside him, her head on his shoulder, while he typed away on his laptop. His hand never left the keyboard. She memorized the sound of his fingers more than the sound of his laugh. She started going to bed without waiting. He never noticed when. One night, she curled into him in bed. He turned away. "I'm tired." She stared at the back of his head. She wasn't angry. She just felt invisible. In therapy years later, she would explain it like this. It wasn't one moment. It was the slow death of 100 moments that could have saved us, but didn't. Mira noticed. "You look dimmer," she said once over lunch. Nyla smiled faintly. "I'm just tired." "No," Mira said. "You're drained." Nyla didn't deny it. She didn't know how to explain to someone how a beautiful home could feel so empty. She had everything, but not him. Not really. Kaylin started sleeping in later. She started rising earlier. Their schedules ran parallel, never intersecting. They hadn't fought. But she missed him in the same room. On a Tuesday night, she made his favorite meal. He walked in at 10 p.m. "I ate with the board," he said, removing his jacket. She sat quietly at the table. "You could have called," she said. "I was busy." "You're always busy." He looked up. "What do you want me to say, Nyla?" "That the first matter." He blinked. "You think you don't?" She looked down. "I think you forgot." He didn't respond. He walked past her, into the bedroom. That night, he barely looked at her. She didn't cry. She just stayed awake until morning. Her moments of joy were now private. A good book, a quiet tea. He wasn't part of them anymore. And the saddest part, he didn't notice. One day, she left early and walked along the river. She sat on a bench, pulled out her journal, and wrote 3 questions. 1. Do I feel safe? 2. Do I feel seen? 3. Do I feel loved? She couldn't circle yes to any of them. She still believed in love. But love to her had always meant presence. And Kaylin was present in the house, not in the marriage. That's when she started planning her exit. Not to punish him, but to protect herself. Have you ever sat across from someone you love and still felt alone? Let us know in the comments. This is Mr. Charles Stories, where the strongest heartbreaks don't come with screams, but with silence. If you're still with us, like, share, and subscribe for more stories that speak where others stay quiet. She didn't leave overnight, but she started packing inside. First her trust, then her hope, and finally her silence. She planned the anniversary dinner quietly. No expectations, no pressure, just effort. It had been 3 years since she'd said yes to him, and though the last year had been more silence than laughter, she still believed that showing up mattered. She set the table, folded the napkins, lit the candles, cooked the meal he said he loved, though he hadn't requested it in months. She wore a soft cream dress, not tight, not flashy, something simple, something warm. It reminded her of who she was before the silence. By 7:30 p.m., everything was ready. By 8 p.m., she reheated the food. By 9 p.m., she poured herself a glass of water and sipped it slowly. At 9:48 p.m., the door finally opened. Kaylin walked in with his phone still in hand. He glanced at the table but didn't speak. She didn't rush him. She didn't ask questions. He hung his coat, loosened his tie, and rubbed his forehead. "I'm not hungry," he said. "Had a late meeting." They ordered in. She didn't nod this time. She didn't smile. She simply stood up and walked toward the hallway. "Dinner's on the table," she said quietly. He didn't follow, didn't offer an apology, didn't even ask how her day was. She stood at the bedroom door, still in her dress. "I waited," she said, not accusing, just stating. "I'm too tired to talk tonight," he said. toeing off his shoes. That's when he said it. "You can sleep in the guest room." The words didn't hit like a slap. They hit like a closing door. Soft. Final. She stared at him for a second longer, waiting for the moment he'd realize what he said. But he didn't look back. He walked into the bathroom and shut the door. She walked into the guest room slowly, sat on the edge of the bed, exhaled, then stood up. She opened the closet, pulled out a small suitcase, and started packing. No rush, no noise, just movement. A single pair of jeans, 2 shirts, a cardigan, her planner, 1 pair of flats, the necklace her mother gave her after college. She zipped the bag and looked around the room. It wasn't hers. None of it felt like hers anymore. She went back into their bedroom once he was in the shower. She took her pillow, her toothbrush, her charger. Not once did she glance at the mirror. There was no need to see her reflection to know what it would say. She left the lights on, left the dinner out, left no note. She called a car and waited outside, cool air brushing her arms. It felt strange, leaving a house she helped make beautiful. But beauty without connection is decoration, and she was done being decorative. The rental apartment downtown was quiet, white walls, thin carpet, no personal touches. But it was hers for now. She sat on the empty couch, looked around, and finally let herself feel the weight of what just happened. Not in tears, in stillness. The next morning, she woke up at 6:12 a.m. without an alarm. Habit. She made tea, the brand she liked, the one he never drank. She sat by the window and watched the sky shift from grey to pale blue. By the second day, she'd called Mira. "I left," she said simply. Mira didn't ask for details. She just said, "Where are you?" "I'm coming." By the time Mira arrived, Nyla had folded the blankets and cleaned the tiny kitchen. She always cleaned when her heart felt messy. "You okay?" Mira asked, hugging her tightly. "I'm not broken," Nyla said. "I'm just tired." They sat on the floor, cross-legged. No music, no background noise. Mira studied her. "Do you want to go back?" "No." "Do you think he even realizes you're gone?" "I don't know." Mira looked down. "What now?" Nyla glanced toward the window. "I'm going to find a lawyer." Later that day she searched. Divorce attorneys, no children, emotional distance. Dozens of listings came up. She clicked one with a soft-toned site and a quiet mission. "We handle endings gently." She booked a consultation. It was the first time in 3 years she made a decision without checking his schedule. Kaylin came home that evening expecting silence. And he got it. But it wasn't the kind he was used to. The house wasn't quiet because Nyla was resting. It was quiet because Nyla was gone. Kaylin didn't notice she was gone that first night. He assumed she was in the guest room, or had fallen asleep early. That's how far things had drifted. He kicked off his shoes, set his phone on the counter, and went straight to the shower. He didn't see her folded napkin by the plate, didn't notice the untouched wine glasses, didn't realize the air didn't carry her scent anymore. He laid in bed and scrolled through unread emails. He didn't look at her side of the bed. He didn't notice the pillow was gone. By morning, she still hadn't come into the room. He didn't think much of it. Just showered, got dressed and left early. At work, things moved fast. New proposals, investor meetings, calendar blocks. He didn't pause to think. He'd gotten used to not being checked on. It didn't occur to him that she might have stopped checking in because she stopped trying. That night, he came home to a dark house. He called out softly, "Nyla?" No answer. He walked into the guest room. Empty. Kitchen untouched. Table still set. Candle melted into a puddle. Food cold. The smell now sour. He checked their bedroom. Closet door open. Some of her shoes gone. Drawer left half open. Her planner missing. He pulled his phone from his pocket. Scrolled to her name. Tapped call. It rang. And rang. Then voicemail. He stood in the middle of the living room, phone still in hand. His voice didn't raise. but his chest tightened. He called again. Same. Day 2, still no sign of her. The house was spotless. Not a dish in the sink, not a scarf on the chair, not a tea bag on the counter. He noticed how empty that felt. It wasn't the mess he missed. It was the trace of her existence. He poured water into a mug and opened the cabinet out of habit. 12 teas lined the shelf. Not a single one opened. She used to start every morning with tea. Always different. Today, none. He went to her studio. Receptionist barely looked up. She's not in. When was the last time? She emailed last week. Said she needed a personal break. He nodded once. Left. Sat in his car and stared at his phone. No missed calls. No messages. He opened his text thread with her. So many one-word answers. So many conversations that ended with him. Her. Made dinner if you're home before 8. Him. Won't make it. Sorry. Her. Want to take a walk this weekend? Him. Busy Sunday. Her. Can we talk tonight? Him. Let's do tomorrow. Too tired. He scrolled. Hundreds of unread chances. That night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. No sound. No brush of her feet when she walked in after moisturizing. No click of her watch being set on the nightstand. No soft sigh when she curled into the pillow. The silence used to comfort him. Now it gnawed. On day 3, he walked into her studio again. Receptionist said, she left a few things behind, but hasn't checked in. He walked to the window near her desk. Looked out at the city. This is where she found calm. And he had become the noise. He went home and stood in the doorway. Their home looked like a magazine, but it didn't feel like anything. He walked into the kitchen, looked at the table she had set days ago. He finally noticed the gold-trimmed napkins. She used them only on special days. That's when it hit him. He missed the anniversary, not just forgot. He erased it, and she still showed up. For him, he gave her silence. She gave him dinner and dignity, and when he pushed her into the guest room, she chose to leave without a sound, because she knew what he didn't. Silence should never be used to punish. It should only be a place to rest, and he hadn't let her rest in years. He sat down at the dinner table she set for 2, picked up the fork, and didn't eat a bite. Nyla didn't answer his calls, not the first, not the second, not the 10th. He stopped trying by the 12th, not because he gave up, but because he realized calling wouldn't fix what ignoring had broken. Instead, he sat at the edge of their bed. The space felt bigger now, as if her absence hollowed out the walls. He walked to her side of the closet. The hangers still swayed slightly from where she'd pulled her dresses. Her favorite coat, the soft beige one, gone. Her hair ties, her perfume, the hand cream she always left by the mirror, gone. But what hit him most was the pillow, gone. She hadn't left her things. She'd left him. He texted her again. Nyla. I'm sorry. Please let me talk to you. Nothing. She was at the attorney's office. The woman, calm-voiced and kind-eyed, walked her through the next steps. Nyla didn't blink, didn't flinch. She asked every question clearly. I don't want to fight, she said. We won't, the lawyer replied. Nyla didn't mention assets, didn't ask for support. She simply wanted out. Clean, peaceful, that's all. 2 days later, she walked into the house again. For the first time since she left, she wore soft flats, simple jeans, a cardigan buttoned to the top. Her hair was pinned back. She didn't wear makeup. She didn't knock. She still had a key. Kalen was in the living room. He stood the moment he saw her. Nyla. She didn't flinch, didn't sit. She reached into her bag, pulled out an envelope, and placed it on the coffee table. Divorce papers, she said. He froze. I'll give you time to read and sign. He opened his mouth, closed it. She turned to leave. Wait. She paused. I didn't mean what I said that night. She looked back at him. But you said it. I was tired, stressed, She nodded slowly. I was tired too, Kaylin. For 3 years. His face dropped. You asked me to sleep in the guest room like I was nothing to you. You weren't nothing, he said, voice cracking. But you made me feel like I was, she replied. Quiet. Honest. I never cheated. I never hurt you, he said, reaching. She stepped back. But you disappeared while standing right next to me, she said. That hurt more. He looked down. She didn't stay longer. She walked out. He stood there, the envelope still on the table. He didn't touch it for hours. Then, with a trembling hand, he opened it. It wasn't dramatic. No insults, no accusations, just facts. Dates, terms, her signature. He traced it with his finger. And then quietly, finally, he shook. Kaylin didn't leave the house the next day. He tried to work from home, opened his laptop, logged in, but nothing moved. Not the screen, not his fingers, not his thoughts. He kept hearing her voice. You disappeared while standing next to me. The papers sat on the kitchen table. He hadn't signed them. He hadn't even flipped past the first page. He stared at the place where she signed her name. It looked so clean. No hesitation in her strokes. No pressure marks. No second guesses. That was what scared him the most. She wasn't acting out of rage. She was acting out of clarity. He opened their old photo folder on his phone. Scrolled through pictures. The early ones. Her first selfie in their house. Her laughing at his burnt pancakes. Their trip to Asheville, when he forgot his laptop for once. Her hand resting on his in a quiet booth. She always smiled gently. Not wide, but real. Now, her absence filled every room. And the silence, this time, wasn't hers. It was his. Nyla didn't wait for his reply. She moved through her days quietly. Therapy at 9 a.m. on Thursdays. Grocery runs on Sundays. Mira stayed over on weekends sometimes. They drank tea, watched shows. Didn't talk about Kaylin much, but every now and then Mira would glance over. You okay? I will be, Nyla always said, because it was true. One morning, she returned from a walk to find a small white bag at her apartment door. No name on it. Inside, a pastry box. Her favorite almond croissant. And a note. You used to smile on Tuesday mornings because of these. I didn't pay attention before. I'm trying now. Kay, she didn't smile. But she didn't throw it away either. That afternoon, she received another message. Not a call. A text. I didn't sign the papers yet. Not because I'm trying to stop you, but because I realized I never said I was sorry. Not with action. Would you meet me once? Just to listen. I owe you that. She stared at the message for a long time. She didn't reply. But she didn't delete it either. 3 days passed. Then she walked into her studio one morning to find a small envelope on her desk. Her assistant said, "Some guy dropped it off, tall, quiet, wore a blue cap. Inside the envelope, a list, handwritten, careful, things I didn't do but should have." That night, she called Mira. "I don't know what to do," she said. "You don't have to do anything right now. I'm scared he's only waking up because I left." Mira paused. "Maybe. But sometimes people don't hear thunder until after the lightning strikes." Nyla breathed in slowly. "I didn't want to break him." "I know," Mira said gently. "You didn't want to win. You wanted peace. And he wasn't peace. Maybe now he's learning how to be." Nyla didn't rush. She didn't reply to the letter. Didn't text him. She went to sleep that night, staring at the ceiling. She wasn't angry anymore, just cautious. She'd spent years pouring into something that never poured back. If he wanted to repair that, he'd have to come with more than words. He'd have to come with presence. Kaylin didn't sleep the night after she delivered the divorce papers. Not because of fear, but because of memory. He remembered her laugh when she first heard the doorbell melody in their house. How she said it sounded like a chime in a dream. He remembered how she always carried 2 tea bags in her purse, just in case someone needed calm. He remembered the way she used to reach for his hand under the table when guests overstayed. Now his hands were always cold. He showed up at her studio the next morning. He wore a dark jacket and jeans. No suit, no pretense. He didn't go inside. He just stood across the street, hands in his pockets, eyes watching the doorway. People passed. Wind moved. He stayed. He waited there from 8:20 a.m. to 12:14 p.m. Then she appeared. She stepped out holding a tote bag and a rolled blueprint under one arm. She saw him immediately, paused, then continued walking, steady, poised. Kaylin stepped forward, but didn't block her. "Aye." She nodded once. "You've been here a while?" "Yeah." She looked him over. "Why?" "Because I needed you to see I'm not running this time." She didn't respond. "I'm not asking for anything," he added quickly. "I'm just showing up." She stopped walking, looked at him closely. "That's not a performance?" He shook his head. "No. I didn't bring a speech. Just presence." She considered that, then said, "I have a site visit. I'm late." He nodded. "Okay." She walked past him, but didn't rush, and when she reached the corner, she looked back. He was still standing there, watching, not chasing. She kept walking, but slower now. That night, he received a message. "You looked tired. Eat something real, not boardroom food." That was it. But he smiled, because she hadn't said, "Leave me alone." She'd said, "Eat." And that meant something. He took it seriously, made himself dinner, sat down, ate quietly, no distractions, no phone. For the first time in months, he ate like someone might ask how it tasted. The next morning, she found another note on her desk. Short, simple, no deliveries today. Just a question. "When did you stop feeling seen?" Kay. She didn't answer it, but she folded the note and placed it in her planner. That was the first thing she hadn't thrown away in days. Kaylin went to therapy. Not couples, not staged. Just him. He didn't tell anyone. He found the listing in a quiet directory, chose someone who didn't ask about tech, or investments, or vision boards. Just a man with a couch and a question. Why now? Kaylin looked down and said, "Because I thought I was fine. But I hurt someone who never asked for anything but effort, and I don't know how I didn't see that." The therapist said something simple in response. "You don't fix presence with gifts. You fix it by staying long enough to feel uncomfortable." Kaylin didn't answer, but he returned the next week. Nyla kept her routine, but she noticed things. The way he stopped sending gifts. The way he stopped texting things like please and when. He replaced all of it with one steady rhythm, showing up. Quietly, without promise, without pressure. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel watched. She felt seen. Nyla didn't know what she wanted from him. She just knew what she didn't want. She didn't want apologies coated in guilt. She didn't want public gestures. She didn't want him to be perfect now that she was gone. She wanted consistency, steady, quiet, real, not for a week, but until the pattern outlived the past. For days, Kaylin stayed away. He didn't text, didn't appear. She wondered if he had given up, but part of her respected that too. He wasn't hovering. He wasn't begging. Maybe he was letting her breathe. Then, a week later, she saw him again, not at her studio, but outside the wellness wing she designed for Reese Tech years ago. He sat on one of the benches she personally chose during the planning phase. He looked tired, not from loss, but from growth. He was staring at the structure like it was the first time he'd ever noticed its shape. She crossed the street and stood a few steps away. He looked up, didn't move. "I forgot how much of this you built," he said, eyes still on the building. She said nothing. "But I remember now," he added, quietly. She nodded once. "That's good. I don't want to take up your space," he said, standing slowly. "But I'll always make space for you, if you ever want it." Then he walked away, didn't linger, didn't wait for a reply. She stood there long after he left. Her eyes scanned the structure, the wellness wing, the one place she poured her heart into when they were still new. She remembered the meetings, the coffee runs, the quiet moments they shared in the break room between design choices. It wasn't flashy, but it had been honest. Back then, he listened. Back then, she mattered. She missed that version of him. 2 nights later, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A voice said, "Miss Brooke? Your name was listed as an emergency contact for Kaylin Reese." Her heart dropped. "What happened?" "Nothing serious," the nurse replied. "He passed out in our lobby. Seems like exhaustion. He's stable now, just needs rest." Nyla didn't even think. She grabbed her keys. He was half asleep when she arrived, still in his jacket, head turned toward the wall. She stepped into the room. He looked up, eyes hazy, then wide. "Nyla." "I'm your emergency contact," she asked gently. He nodded, embarrassed. "I never changed it." She stood still. "Why'd you pass out?" "Didn't eat. Forgot to sleep." "I'm fine now." She frowned. "You call this fine?" He looked down. "No." She stepped closer. "This isn't how you get someone back, Kaylin." "I wasn't trying to," he said. "I was just surviving the day." She looked at him, really looked. His eyes had lost that CEO shine. He looked human, vulnerable, tired. For the first time, he wasn't trying to be in control. He was just there. She sat beside him, quietly. Didn't scold, didn't rescue, just stayed. When the nurse returned, Nyla filled out the release form, helped him into her car. He didn't argue. She drove him back, not to his place, not to hers, but to a quiet hotel he'd apparently been staying in. "I haven't gone home since the papers," he admitted. She didn't respond. At the entrance, she pulled over. He looked at her. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't come for you," she said honestly. "I came because I know what burnout looks like." He smiled faintly. "Still, thank you." She nodded. "Take care of yourself, Kaylin." Then she drove away. That night, Nyla sat by her window, tea in hand, and stared at the sky. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew something had changed. Not in him, in her. She no longer hoped he'd be who she needed. She was watching to see who he truly was, when no one was chasing him. Kaylin didn't expect her to stay, but he hadn't expected her to come either. That was the difference now. Every moment felt earned. Nothing was assumed. He woke up the morning after the hospital discharge to a glass of water on the nightstand and a sticky note she left in the car. "Rest. You're no good to anyone if you burn out again." No name, no heart emoji, just the kind of care that used to be constant between them. He stared at the note for minutes before folding it neatly and placing it in his wallet. He didn't know if she was softening, but she was watching, and that meant everything. He checked his calendar and cancelled all non-essential meetings. No fake emergencies, no posturing. He went to therapy. Again. His therapist asked, "What did you feel when she walked into that hospital room?" Kaylin sat in silence for a while, then said, "Like I was being seen again, but not forgiven." "Do you think you deserve forgiveness?" "I think I deserve the chance to keep showing up, even if she never gives me her heart again." The therapist nodded. That's presence. That's what she asked for before she left. He started showing up for himself first, waking early, cooking real food, turning off his phone by 8 p.m. He didn't try to fill the silence anymore. He just lived with it. And when it hurt, he wrote, sometimes a sentence, sometimes 2 pages. He kept a small notebook in his jacket, and every day he added one line, "What I would have done differently if I had paid attention sooner." He didn't plan to show her the book. It wasn't for her. It was for the version of him he should have been all along. Nyla noticed the change slowly. It wasn't in grand gestures. It was in the absence of performance. He didn't text every day, didn't ask her to dinner, didn't send flowers, but he replied when she reached out. And when he did, the tone was new. No guilt, no desperation, just calm, real. One afternoon, she walked into her studio after a site meeting and found a package on her desk. She almost rolled her eyes, until she saw the label. No card, just a small frame. Inside it was a simple printout of a quote she once said to him during a design meeting. "You don't build peace by adding more walls. You build it by adding windows." It wasn't romantic, but it was thoughtful. She leaned the frame against her pencil cup, didn't hang it. But she didn't hide it either. Later that week, Mira asked her a question over dinner. "Do you still love him?" Nyla was quiet for a long time. "I don't know," she finally said. Mira waited. "But I'm not angry anymore," Nyla added. "And that scares me more than when I was." "Why?" "Because if I'm not angry, I have room to care again. And I don't want to go back to that version of me who waited around hoping he'd notice." Mira nodded. "You won't go back. You've changed." Nyla looked down at her plate. "I think he has too." A week later, Kalen did something unexpected. He reached out, not to ask for her time, but to give it. "I'm speaking at a mental health conference, sharing what I've learned. I used to think leadership was about never showing weakness. Now I know presence is the strongest thing a man can offer. You taught me that. If you come, fine. If not, I'll still speak with you in mind." She read the message twice, didn't reply, but on the day of the event, she was there. In the back row, no one noticed her, but he did. He met her eyes once, then looked away, and then he spoke, not about her, not about their story, but about how he once mistook achievement for connection, and how that mistake cost him more than he could ever count. She listened to every word, and when it was over, she slipped out before he could find her. But she left something behind on his seat. A folded program with 2 words written on it. "You're listening now." Kalen found the program under his chair once the room cleared. He stared at the words she wrote. Short, deliberate, a response he hadn't asked for, but one that carried more weight than any apology. He folded the paper carefully, slid it into his wallet next to the sticky note from the hospital. Then he sat still, let the room stay empty for a while, because this time he didn't want to rush past the moment. He wanted to feel it. That evening, he didn't text her. He didn't need to. She knew he saw it. She knew it landed. That was enough. The next day, Nyla opened her sketchbook for the first time in weeks, not to draw for a client, just for herself. She sketched a home, not her townhouse, not a mansion, just something quiet, open, more windows than doors, fewer walls. She didn't realize until she shaded in the front porch that her eyes were misting. It wasn't sadness. It was release. Mira came by that evening with groceries and sarcasm. "You look like you slept." "I did. You dream?" "Maybe," Nyla said, smiling softly. They ate on the floor like college girls again. Mira tilted her head. "Is he still showing up?" Nyla nodded. "But not in front of me." "Good. I'm not sure what I want next," Nyla admitted. "That's okay." Mira leaned closer. "But if it's him, it has to be new." "I know. Clean." Nyla nodded again. "Not just started over, rebuilt, with intention." Meanwhile, Kalen wasn't rushing toward her. He was rebuilding his own rhythm. He started mentoring new hires at Reese Tech, not to prove anything, but because it reminded him how to care. He left the office by 6 p.m. each day. No exceptions. He turned down press interviews, started journaling, not about her, about himself. The parts he buried, the pride he wore, the lessons he missed. He wasn't trying to become perfect. He was trying to become whole. Nyla noticed the difference before she spoke to him again. She heard about the mentoring from a former client, saw a video of his conference online, watched it again. And again, she didn't cry. She didn't hope. But she started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was doing the work for himself, not for applause. That mattered. A week later, he showed up again. Not at her door. Not outside her office. At the bookstore she loved, the one she used to read at before she met him. She stood near the window flipping through a hardcover when she saw him enter. He didn't see her. He walked slowly through the non-fiction aisle, picked up a book on emotional presence, and sat by the window, where she always used to sit. He opened the book and started reading. No fanfare, no searching, just reading. And in that moment, she realized he wasn't showing up for her. He was showing up where she once existed, because that was how you remember someone you care about, by returning to the places they felt most alive. She stepped outside, heart steady. She didn't go to him, not that day. But later that evening, she sent a short message. That seat by the window, it's where I used to feel safe. I'm glad you found it. He responded hours later. I'm still learning where safety lives. But I think it starts with remembering what I didn't protect. They didn't make plans, but the air between them was different now. No pressure, no desperation, no chase. Just two people standing in the space between what was lost and what might grow again. Have you ever had to walk away just to see if someone would finally show up? Let us know in the comments. At Mr. Charles Stories, we believe presence isn't a performance. It's a promise. If this chapter spoke to you, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that teach, touch, and transform. Nyla didn't mark the day on her calendar, but something about the way she moved told her it was time. She opened the drawer where she kept the divorce papers, still unsigned by him, still folded exactly how she left them. She took them out, set them on the counter, and left them there. She wasn't sure what she planned to do, but she needed them visible again, not to remind herself of what he hadn't signed, but to remember what she'd been willing to walk away from, and what it took to reach that decision. That same afternoon, she walked into the little plant shop she used to visit every Sunday. It was quiet, warm, green with life. The same older woman was behind the counter. Nyla smiled, picked out a small pot of rosemary, and waited patiently in line. Then a voice behind her said gently, "I always wondered why you liked rosemary." She turned slowly. Kaylin, holding a potted lavender plant in both hands. No pretense, no suit. She raised a brow. "You following me?" "No. I started doing what you used to do. I wanted to feel what peace felt like." She paused. "And it's quiet, hard, but real." He stepped forward and placed the lavender on the counter. "I'll let you check out first." She looked at him carefully, then nodded and stepped aside. "Go ahead. You were here first." He smiled, brief and soft. "Ladies first." They walked out at the same time. She didn't rush to her car. He didn't ask her to talk. They walked side by side down the sidewalk, two plants between them. She finally spoke. "I kept waiting for you to try to fix everything all at once." "I wanted to," he said. "But I realized trying to fix it that way was what broke it in the first place." She nodded. "And now? I don't want to rush. I want to understand." Another step. She looked over at him. "What are you hoping I'll do?" "Nothing," he answered. "You don't owe me a return." She studied him. "So why keep showing up?" "Because I was the one who left first. Even when I stayed in the house." They reached the corner where their paths would split. She stopped. So did he. She looked down at the rosemary, then up at him. "I'm not saying I'm coming back." "I know," he said. "But I'm not saying I'm done watching either." His breath caught, but he didn't show it. He only said, "That's more than I hoped for." Then he walked away. Not fast, not slow, just steady. That night, she placed the rosemary on her window, watered it, sat with it, and for the first time in a long time, she whispered softly to herself, "I still feel something." Kaylin didn't reach out after that day. He didn't need to. Something unspoken had shifted between them. It wasn't about timelines anymore. It wasn't about closure either. It was about whether what once broke could hold again. Not perfectly, but honestly. Nyla tended to her rosemary each morning. It grew faster than she expected. Each time she watered it, she thought of his words. "I don't want to rush. I want to understand." She couldn't deny it anymore. She wasn't just healing. She was curious again, curious about who he might be now. Curious if the version of her that left could meet a new version of him halfway, not to rewrite the past, but to build something rooted in truth. One evening, she found herself standing at her closet, staring at a soft linen dress. She hadn't worn it in over a year. It was pale green, loose, and wrapped gently around her waist. She didn't put it on. She didn't need to. But she thought about how she felt the last time she wore it. Calm, whole. She missed feeling safe in her own softness, not careful, not protective, just soft. Later that week, she texted him for the first time in days. The lavender's doing better than expected. Must be the sunlight. He responded an hour later, or maybe the attention it finally got. She smiled, then sent one more message. Dinner. Nothing heavy. Just a walk and food. Tomorrow. The next evening, they met at a quiet spot tucked off a residential street. A local bistro with 5 tables, soft jazz, and no cameras. He was already there when she arrived. He didn't stand too fast. He didn't try to touch her. He simply smiled. And she smiled back. Dinner wasn't about the past. Not right away. They talked about small things. Books. A bakery she discovered. He mentioned a new mentorship program he started. She raised a brow. You? He nodded. I'm good at listening now. She sipped her tea. I'll be the judge of that. His grin softened. Fair. After dinner, they walked. No destination. She tucked her hands into her coat. He walked beside her with his arms relaxed. Remember that house we once passed? The one with the stained glass windows? She asked. He thought for a moment. The one with the vines up the left side? Yes. He nodded. You said it looked like a secret someone forgot to keep. She laughed lightly. You remembered. I forgot a lot of things, he said. But not the things you loved. She looked ahead. I didn't want you to forget them. I wanted you to share them. I didn't know how to make room. They stopped walking. She looked at him. I never needed you to be perfect, she said quietly. I needed you to meet me in the silence. I'm here now. I know. They stood on the sidewalk, not holding hands, not promising anything, but the silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was open, like a window cracked gently in the evening, letting in a little light. That night, when she got home, she walked past the rosemary and pulled the divorce papers off the counter. She didn't shred them. She didn't burn them. She placed them in a drawer, closed it gently, and whispered to herself, if we do this, it has to be new. Every step. The next week, they didn't text daily. They didn't set dates. But they passed each other like two people finding rhythm again. At the coffee shop. At the bookstore. At the park bench where she sometimes went to sketch. He never assumed she wanted company. He waited until she invited it. And slowly, she did. One late afternoon, Nyla stood outside her studio, sipping a warm drink. Kalin pulled up, not in his usual black SUV, but in a quiet grey sedan. She noticed. He stepped out, hands tucked in his coat, and said, "Walk?" She nodded. They strolled without speaking for a block or two. Then she glanced sideways. "You sold the big car." He smiled. Didn't need the size anymore. Didn't like the weight. She took another sip. "It was very CEO of you. Exactly what I'm trying not to be. Outside the office." She nodded once, almost approving. They reached the garden path near the edge of downtown, a place she'd once described as quiet enough for a heart to think. He remembered. They sat on the bench, and for a long time didn't say a word. Then he finally asked, "What does healing look like to you now?" She didn't answer right away. She watched a child chase leaves near the path, a mother laughing behind him. Then she said, "Healing looks like freedom, but not from you, from the version of me that waited too long to be chosen." Kalin looked down. "I'm not here to pull you back," he said gently. "I'm here if you want someone to walk forward with. But only if you want it." She looked over. "I'm still deciding." "That's fair." A breeze passed. The sun dipped lower, And without thinking, she reached out, just lightly, her hand brushing the back of his. Not a full hold. Just touch. Real. Present. Earned. He didn't grab it. He let her decide. Her fingers stayed there longer than a second. Then left. They didn't talk about it afterward. They didn't need to. Because sometimes the most important contact isn't physical. It's the space someone doesn't fill without permission. That night, she left her studio early, lit a candle, sat on the rug with her sketch pad, and wrote at the top of the page, "Who am I now?" Below it, she didn't sketch a house. She sketched a hand, hers, open, facing upward, as if waiting for whatever came next, but not begging. Meanwhile, Kalen stood in his kitchen. He didn't scroll. He didn't pace. He poured tea, hers. He had started drinking it after she left. At first out of guilt, then habit, now comfort. He sat at his table, took out the notebook he'd been filling with single lines, and for the first time wrote a full paragraph. Today, she touched my hand. Not because I asked, not because I earned it, because she wanted to remind me she's still human, and I need to meet her there. Nothing more. He closed the book, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like something was slipping through his fingers. He felt still. Nyla didn't tell Mira right away. Not about the walk, not about the hand, not about the quiet bench where the wind moved more than they did. Some things were too sacred to explain while they were still unfolding. Instead, she simply said, "I feel like I'm breathing softer these days." Mira smiled. "That's not nothing. It's everything," Nyla replied. That weekend, Nyla visited her parents in Charleston. Her mother greeted her with a long, wordless hug. Her father played a soft jazz record in the background. No one asked about Kalen, but her mother made tea the way Nyla liked it. Her father left a new sketchbook on her pillow, their way of saying, "You're not alone," and you never were. On Sunday evening, as she packed to return to Boston, her father sat with her on the porch. He didn't ask questions, but after a long pause he said, "You've always had the kind of love that lets others rest in it." She looked up. "But resting and leaning aren't the same," he added. "Don't forget, whoever you welcome back into your space needs to be able to carry some of it too." She nodded slowly. That was the reminder she didn't know she needed. When she returned home, Kalen hadn't messaged her. She respected that. He wasn't chasing her. He wasn't waiting either. He was living, like she was. Later that week, she ran into him again, this time at the Saturday morning market. He stood by the honey stall, sampling a spoonful. When he saw her, he smiled. "You still love clover honey?" She smirked. "Only when it's local." He bought a jar, handed it to her. "For your tea," he said. She hesitated, then accepted it. "Thanks." They walked together down one aisle, talked about nothing. Weather, a new bakery pop-up, the fruit stand she used to visit with Mira. Then he paused at a booth selling handmade journals. Picked one up. She watched as he flipped through the pages, then said, "Been writing?" "More than I speak," he replied. She liked that. Liked him like this, not trying, just being. They sat at the edge of the plaza near a fountain. She set the honey down beside her. He didn't comment. They watched people pass. Then she said, softly, "I put the papers away." He turned slowly. "I didn't sign them either." She nodded. "I know. I wasn't holding back to win," he said. "I was holding back because I wasn't ready to stop showing up. And I wasn't ready to be disappointed again," she replied. They sat with that, not bitterly, not tensely, just truthfully. Then she added, "If we keep doing this, it can't be a return to what we had." He nodded. "It won't be. It has to be new, slow, real." He looked her in the eyes. "One day at a time." She smiled. "Starting when?" "Starting with this moment." The fountain bubbled quietly beside them. The city moved, but they didn't. There was no dramatic kiss, no title reclaimed, no status updated, just two people who had once been broken, now sitting beside each other, whole enough to try again. That evening, She placed the jar of clover honey next to her tea mugs, then lit a candle and let it burn for hours while she wrote one sentence in her new sketchbook. I returned to myself, and that's how I found my way back to him. She didn't invite him in the night she told him about the papers, but a few days later, she sent a message. "I'm cooking tonight. If you're free, just dinner, nothing more." He didn't ask questions. He just replied, "What time?" It wasn't the house they once shared. This was her new space, smaller, quieter, but full of her. He noticed that the second he walked in, soft lights, books stacked near the windows, the rosemary she kept alive near the sill. He paused at the door, not stepping in until she said, "Shoes off." He smiled and did as she asked. She wore a linen top, hair pulled back loosely, no makeup, just real and peaceful. He didn't try to hug her. He walked into the kitchen slowly, hands in his pockets. "It smells like garlic and something comforting, spinach pasta and rosemary bread," she said, not turning from the stove. He looked over at the little pot by the window. "From that?" She nodded. He walked to the edge of the counter and leaned on it. "I've missed your food. I never stopped cooking," she said. He nodded, quiet. "But you stopped cooking for us." She didn't answer. Dinner was served at the small round table tucked under a warm light fixture. No centerpiece, no folded napkins, just 2 plates, water glasses, a quiet playlist humming in the background. He sat down and looked at her. "This already feels different." "It is," she said. "It has to be." He respected that, didn't romanticize the moment. He picked up his fork and said, "Thank you for this." She looked across at him and nodded once. "For showing up," she replied. They ate slowly, talked between bites. He asked about her latest project. She told him about a design retreat she was considering attending. He told her he stepped down from a few board positions to free up time and space. "I was spreading myself thin, trying to prove I was important," he admitted. "Turns out, I was just absent." She listened, didn't comfort him, just listened. He liked that about her. Always had. After dinner, she brought over 2 cups of tea. He smiled at the smell. Still orange peel and chamomile. She passed him the mug. Still, he held it gently, sipping. "I don't know if I'll ever deserve a second chance," he said, voice steady. She looked at him. "It's not about deserving." "What is it about then?" She let the silence linger, then said, "It's about doing something with the chance. If you get it." He nodded. Didn't ask if he had it. Didn't ask what came next. They both knew the answer didn't live in words. It lived in what came after this dinner. When the teacups were empty, he stood slowly. She walked him to the door. He paused at the frame. "I'm glad I saw this part of your world." She raised a brow. "The part that's mine?" He nodded. "The part you built alone." She didn't smile, but her eyes warmed. As he stepped out, she called softly, "Kaylin." He turned. She took a breath. "Thanks for knocking." He gave a small, grateful nod, then left. She closed the door gently, not to shut him out, but to hold space for what was beginning. Whatever it would be, it wouldn't rush, and it wouldn't repeat the past. This time, it would be chosen, every step of the way. The next few weeks moved like careful brushstrokes. Nothing rushed, nothing skipped. Kaylin didn't try to fill every gap with gestures. He let the quiet speak too. And Nyla. She let the quiet hold her without bracing. They began meeting once a week, sometimes at her place, sometimes for walks, sometimes not at all. He never asked for more. She never explained less. One evening, as they sat at a park bench watching dusk pull the light from the sky, he asked, "Do you still have the papers?" She nodded. "In a drawer. You haven't signed them." "No." "Because you want to keep the option?" "No," she said softly. "Because I want to know I made the choice, not the reaction." He let that settle. One Friday night, she invited him over again. This time, there was no formality. She was in a robe, hair wet from a shower, Dinner wasn't on the table. It was takeout on the floor. They sat across from each other, dipping dumplings in sauce and sharing ginger beer. "I used to think comfort was found in order," Kaylin said. She looked up, curious. "But now I think comfort is found in being invited to the floor, robe and all." She smiled, then nudged him with her foot. "You always overthink. Not tonight." "No?" He looked at her. "Tonight, I'm just grateful to be here." After they ate, she lay back on the floor, eyes to the ceiling. He stretched beside her. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. "Do you miss our old life?" she asked. He took a breath. "I miss parts of it. The mornings before I stopped being present, the nights we spent on the couch with your feet in my lap, the times you hummed while folding clothes." She smiled. "I forgot I used to do that. You did it when you were happy." She turned her head to look at him. "And you? Are you happy now?" "I'm awake now." She nodded slowly. "That matters more." The next morning, he brought breakfast. Not flashy, just 2 bagels and a thermos of coffee. He left it at her doorstep with a note tucked under the lid. No pressure, just provision. Kay. She opened the door minutes later. The bag was still warm. She texted, "Come back at 7. I'm cooking. Not for us. Just for dinner." He replied, "Understood. I'll bring the dishes this time." At 6:59 p.m., he was at her door. She opened it with flour on her cheek and music in the background. "You're early," she said. He held up 2 dishes. "Technically, I'm right on time." She laughed and stepped aside. They made dinner together that night. It was the first time since before everything fell apart. Their hands moved in the kitchen, shoulders brushed. There were no sparks forced, but there was heat, gentle and steady. She looked up at him while stirring a pot. "You're comfortable now," she said. "In your space?" he asked. "In your own skin." He smiled. "Took long enough." "You're still learning," she reminded. "So are you," he said softly. She nodded. "We both are." After dinner, they sat on the couch, not touching, but closer than they had before. She leaned her head back, closed her eyes. And he said, almost in a whisper, "I've been thinking about the word us." She opened her eyes but didn't move. "What about it?" "I didn't realize how selfishly I used it. I said us when I meant me, and you fitting into it." She turned her head toward him, slow and steady. "And now I say it with open hands." She watched him for a long moment, then whispered, "Say it again." He didn't rush. He simply said, "Us," and this time, she didn't flinch. Spring came quietly. Nyla noticed it not by the calendar, but by the way light lingered on her kitchen floor just a little longer in the evening. The rosemary pot bloomed small purple flowers. Kaylin noticed too. He stopped commenting on changes. He started participating in them, bringing soil for repotting, replacing the light bulb in her porch lamp without being asked, leaving a note tucked into her sketchbook. "The light catches your plants better now. Maybe it'll catch us too." They didn't call it reconciliation. They didn't even say they were back together. They were steady. Dinner once a week became 2, then 3, then groceries together, then brushing shoulders in the same kitchen without feeling the need to explain why it worked. One evening, as they folded laundry on the couch, Nyla laughed. A real, light laugh. Kaylin froze a little, not in fear, but in reverence. She noticed. "What?" she asked. He smiled. "That sound. What about it? I didn't realize how much I missed it until I heard it again." She softened. "It comes easier now." "Why?" "Because I'm not loving you from exhaustion anymore," she said. "I'm not asking you to love me from emptiness either." She nodded. "That's the difference." The divorce papers stayed in the drawer, no longer a threat, no longer a shield, just a reminder of the chapter that taught them both how presence is more powerful than promises. One Sunday, they walked through a local garden market. No hand-holding, no labels, just ease. They stopped by a ceramic vendor. Nyla picked up a small white mug with a crack down the side. mended with gold. Kaelin studied it. You like that? She turned it over. It's been repaired, but not hidden. That's why. He didn't speak right away. Then said, that's what I want us to be. Not shiny, just honest. She placed the mug on the counter. Then, let's start with this. He paid without hesitation. It sat on her shelf that evening, right beside the rosemary. Later that night, she said something quietly as she washed dishes. If we ever say, I do again. Kaelin looked up. We say it slow, and we say it whole. He didn't move, didn't reply right away, then nodded. We say it from now, not from memory. She smiled at that, then handed him a towel. Kaelin didn't bring up the anniversary, not because he forgot, but because he remembered everything. What he missed, what he ruined, what she rebuilt alone. And yet, on that day, he still showed up, not with flowers, not with a ring, but with groceries, wine, and a folded napkin, the kind she used to set years ago. She opened the door, surprised. I thought you might let this one pass, she said softly. I thought you might not open the door. They stood there, looking at each other. She stepped aside. Dinner's already started. They cooked together. No candles, no dress, no speech. She wore socks and a soft sweater. He peeled garlic. At one point, their elbows bumped. They didn't apologize. They kept chopping. Over dinner, he poured her a glass of wine. She raised a brow. He said, just one. She sipped, then asked, why today? He looked at her gently. Because last time, I told you to sleep in the guest room. She paused. Tonight, I'd rather be invited to the table. She blinked slowly. You're not sleeping here. I know. I'm not ready for that. I know that too, but thank you, she said. For remembering. I didn't remember a date, he said. I remembered a wound. That quieted everything. After dinner, they sat outside on the steps. She pulled her sweater around her tighter. He offered his jacket. She refused, but she smiled when he did it anyway. She turned toward him. I still don't know if we'll end up married again. He nodded. I'm not asking for a decision, but if we do, she continued, we never repeat the way we began. Never. No separate lives, no silences. He placed his hands together, not quite touching hers. And if we don't? He asked. She looked at him clearly. Then I'll still be thankful you grew. He swallowed. And I'll still be thankful you left, he said quietly. That surprised her. Because if you hadn't, he added, I never would have known what it means to truly show up. They sat there for a long time. The street was quiet. The sky above them soft. No kisses, no fireworks. But something honest moved between them. Forgiveness, not rushed, not spoken, just present. When he stood to leave, she followed him to the door. He turned to say goodbye, but before he could speak, she touched his arm, then pressed a small envelope into his hand. He looked at her, confused. What's this? She didn't answer, just nodded. Good night, Kaelin. He left. At home, he opened the envelope. Inside were the divorce papers, still unsigned, and written at the bottom, in her handwriting, we don't need to erase what we were. We need to be brave enough to write something new. N. Have you ever had to walk away just to remember your own name? And when you did you return as someone stronger? Tell us in the comments. At Mr. Charles Stories, we tell stories not about perfect love, but about presence, growth, and the power of choosing each other again, even when it's hard. If this story stayed with you, share it, like it. And don't forget to subscribe. We'll be here with more stories that heal.